lawyer coming in here after somebody gets struck in the back because they stepped back when somebody was coming out of the beauty parlor there and got hit by a vehicle. To county council, aren't we kind of setting ourselves up for some action here? I mean, you can't always judge the outcome of this, but I'm concerned here that, we've been given fair warning by the people who, this board has been given fair notice by the people who are responsible and knowledgeable about these things. That isn't it really our obligation to take this pretty seriously, what you've said in that memo? And in other discussions, this is not the first discussion we've had about this. But my concern here is, here it is, out in front of us, on the record.
Any time that you have construction in a county right-of-way, there is a potential for county exposure. We have a couple of lawsuits right now dealing with slip and fall cases on sidewalks, which are partially in the county and partially in the state's ownership, or sometimes they're in the county ownership and the ownership of the surrounding landowner. So that is a factor which I think ultimately the county is going to have to look at. But to go back to what Mr. Lynch was saying, this is an appeal just from MHRB, and one of the problems is MHRB does not fit into the normal hierarchy that anywhere else in the county would have, because it is this kind of little side permit process which doesn't fit into the usual flow of coastal development permit or use permit, building permit, and then ultimately they come to the Department of Transportation for the encroachment permit at kind of the end of the process. Usually those issues have all been worked out. And Mr. DeShiel's memo of June 4th, although I think he raises a lot of good questions here, to some degree, I think he naturally sort of responded to the permit that was before him, which was the MHRB permit. But if you look at the three findings MHRB has to make, that none of these things really go into those particular issues. But I think it does put the property owner on notice that you can pursue this, but ultimately when it comes to DOT for the encroachment permit, DOT might have proper grounds either to deny that or to at least condition it in a way that would make this permit that they're getting through the rest of the process perhaps not as useful as or desirable as it might look at the beginning. So there is some potential liability there, but I think that it's going to come back to DOT at some point for the encroachment permit. And I think at that point DOT is going to have to take a look at this. And I don't see this as the kind of conflict that you might get with a situation where it's just an issue of design. The classic one was the cul-de-sac versus the hammerhead T. I think in that situation MHRB makes the call because it has to do with how you design it or what it looks like. Here you're looking at an issue of ownership and potential liability and those factors which ultimately are going to be, I think, more specifically for DOT to decide, not necessarily for MHRB.
And your name, sir, for the record.
For the record, Frank Zotter, County Council.
Thank you. Other questions from the board to staff or other members that have spoken before us? I have a question to DOT and or Mr. Lynch. Were you privy to this package of colored photos?
Sorry about that. Well, we have the black and white version, yes.
Okay, well there's picture number 3 in this package that shows the sidewalk, I believe, farther east of this location. I believe the sidewalk's 36 to maybe 42 inches wide, and then there's a curb. Cars are set off another foot or so out in the street, and then there's a gentleman walking in the street, not even on the sidewalk. So we can't force people to use sidewalks.
Right.
I mean, we can provide them for them. We can lead the horse to the water, but people are going to walk wherever they're going to walk. What we could do is really put the penalty on all these business owners and put parking on only one side of the street. Is that what we want to do? Because we have these existing encroachments that could actually be historical. And if we really want to penalize and screw the people, we could do that. I don't think that's what we're looking at today, though. And we're trying to solve a situation that I believe there is a term called historical decay. something along those lines that actually I think was imposed in this community in the red and greenhouse that forced the owners to actually rebuild those buildings into the beautiful buildings they are today. So that policy, that ordinance, whatever, has been put into effect. Just some points. So if there are no further questions, I'm going to close this public hearing and remand this matter back to the board for action. So be it. So,
I'll wait or I'll start it either way.
okay. Normally, we refer to the
Yeah.
district supervisor, so I don't see the district supervisor. Okay.
That's where we are in this.
Yes.
My take on all of this is that what has been done so far has its issues, has its problems. But if we were to do no further harm, as someone has suggested, acknowledge this is a structure that has been beautifully restored. There may be some taking of county property inadvertently or through other obligations. That would mean here that we would uphold the appeal, looking at the entry deck, the stairway, the encroachment in the public right-of-way, simply say, let's stand what is in place, do no further damage, accept what you have here. MHRB has made a valiant effort, but the Board of Supervisors also have the responsibility for protecting its property, or the public's property, and the public safety, and upholding the regulations that are in place. Therefore, I move, with all of that the Board of Supervisors uphold the appeal and go forward with this with the expectation that we'll get first-class work from MHRB and staff in the future.
Second. So there's a motion and a second to uphold the appeal.
Just grant the appeal.
And grant the appeal. Is there any discussion to the motion? Supervisor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A number of things come to the surface here, and the reason